Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and welcome to my new series, Battlefield Battles of World War I. This is going to be an educational and historical series in which we take a look at some of the battles that actually happened during World War I. It's going to allow us to march towards the launch of Battlefield 1 and educate ourselves along the way, something that I very much have been looking forward to doing. Now, this is a casual series in the sense that I've just got some Battlefield 4 in the background for you. I applaud you to hide the video if you'd like and simply listen to the commentary. That's completely optional and up to you. On top of that, this is very much a learning experience for me, as much as it may be for some of you watching. I don't actually know that much about World War I, so this was the opportunity to do some serious, heavy research and educate myself on each of the battles that I'm going to be covering, something I was really excited about. It's not often that you have the opportunity to educate yourself on a bit of history to then make video content on a YouTube channel about video games. It's awesome how those two things have been able to mesh together in the real world. So something I'm really looking forward to. I already had a lot of fun with this first one. And, you know, finding historical information on the internet it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? It's great that you can find information left and right on the internet. And it's awesome that I don't have to call up an historian and be like, hey man, I'm gonna have to come over to your library because I need to know about this battle of World War I. It's not like that. The stuff exists on the internet, but you have to make sure that you do your due diligence and you cross-check and you reference and you cite all of your work. So the citations for everything that I've used information and resource-wise will be located down in the description below. If you want to click those links and do a little bit more research yourself, feel free. If you just want to make sure that I'm being a good human being and citing my work, you can check down there as well. So I've aimed for the utmost in accuracy with everything we're going to talk about in this series. And I would like to applaud you guys to feel free to add anything to the conversation. You know, if there's some sort of information or fact that you have regarding a specific general or a weapon or a location, feel free to comment. Feel free to add it to the conversation, but I please ask you to cite that information. You need to back it up with some sort of actual factual document to let people know what you're saying is legitimate. Now, I recognize that YouTube is going to flag that as spam. Don't worry. I check my spam thing on a regular basis. I will click it through so everybody's comment gets posted. And again, we can help add to the conversation. So let's kick it off, guys, with what is also considered the first land battle of the war, the Battle of Liege. The Battle of Liege was recognized as a moral victory for the Allies, as represented by Belgium. The battle itself would last for 12 days from August 5th to the 16th, 1914, and the Germans would suffer heavy losses despite greatly outnumbering Belgian forces. Those are two numbers that we'll talk about a little bit later, which are going to blow you away. Now, the German Second Army planned to cross the frontier into a neutral Belgium in an attempt to attack France from the north. The Schlieffen Plan, as the Germans called it, had started. The Schlieffen Plan is essentially the overarching plan to push into France and capture it. If you guys want to do a little bit more research regarding the Schlieffen Plan, you can find out who it was named after and when it was actually implemented into being used as the Schlieffen Plan, essentially. Now, the plan of Field Marshal Carlo von Bölow's Second Army of Germany, comprised of 320,000 men, was to seize the city of Liège, which would give them access to the best entrance into Belgium, a narrow gap between the Limburg Appendix and the Ardennes. 320,000 men. Remember that number. However, the Belgians would be prepared, and Liège was defended by a ring of 12 heavily armored forts built on high ground back in the 1880s, 6 on each side of the Meuse River. The forts would contain a total of 400 retractable guns, up to 210 millimeters in size, and would help compensate for an army of just 70,000 men, led by General Lehmann. That's right, guys, 70,000 Belgians to 320,000 Germans. The Belgians are clearly some tough SOBs, there's no doubt about that. Now, the Germans, under the command of General Emich, with a force of 30,000 men, would attack in the night on August 5th. To the surprise of what was an extremely confident German army, they would sustain heavy losses and make little to no progress. Recognizing the issue at hand, Quartermaster General Erich Ludendorff would call for the use of Zeppelins to drop bombs on the city and the citadel. He would then personally lead the 14th Brigade into a weak point between the forts that had never been reinforced by the Belgians. As it turns out, the Belgians actually planned to build rifle trenches there, and things went one way or another, and they never built those trenches, and that would prove to be the only soft point after the Zeppelins dropped the bombs on the city and the Citadel. Ludendorff and his men would push into the city on August 7th and force the Belgian garrison to surrender. However, the Germans knew they could not hope to continue their advance through Belgium without the capture of those forts, so they introduced a new and unknown to the Allies weapon, an Austrian-built 17-inch howitzer, which would work alongside of the already implemented Big Bertha 420mm siege howitzer, and then turn the forts into rubble. They would finally be taken out on the 16th of August. General Lamont himself would actually be dragged unconscious from one of those forts. He fought until the bitter end. There's no doubt about that. The next day, the 17th of August, the German Second Army, with the First and Third Armies, would begin to implement the next stage of the Schlieffen Plan, embarking on a wide-sweeping wheel movement through Belgium, forcing the Belgian army back to Antwerp, and then, in succession, capturing Brussels with almost no resistance. General von Kluck of the First Army on August 20th would accomplish that task. Now, while the Germans would ultimately win this battle, anything that could slow the rapid advance of the Schlieffen Plan would be considered vital in the early weeks of the war. So while this was a loss, essentially, it was also a win. As I said at the beginning of the video, very much a moral victory for the Belgians and for the Allies. The Schlieffen Plan was, when you look at how fast they moved through Belgium to Antwerp across Brussels, I have a map for you guys. You can hit it down in the description below. It'll kind of give you a illustrated idea of what happened, who got pushed where. And when you look at the dates on this map and you see how quickly, just look at the dates I've talked about here. The 17th, the 20th, the 7th, in a couple weeks. They moved across a ridiculous, area of space. It was obvious that anything that could be done to slow this advance, this plan, would be significant and potentially vital to the success of the Allies in the war. Even though this was the early days of the war, they knew that this was important. That's crazy wartime tactics for you. Absolutely insane. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about those forts, a little bit of additional information, because when I first read about these forts and they said they were built in 1880, I was like, okay, well, that's well before the war, and now maybe tensions were high, but why were they actually built? As it turns out, the first modern forts at Liege were built between 1888 and 1891 at the initiative of Belgian General Henry Alex Realmont. Now, they built these forts purely to deter Germany and France. This was actually after the Franco-Prussian War. Belgium was like, we're neutral, we want to keep you away, and we want to keep you away. So the Liège forts were intended to deter Germany, while they also built forts at Namur, which were there to dissuade the French. Crazy. Crazy that sort of preemptive thought process by one general was like, you just stay back. We're just good people here. We want to be left alone, damn it. That it would end up, providing one of the most important elements in the Battle of Liege, which would ultimately lead to, a battle that, while again, it was a loss, would be considered an overall success and a vital success, nonetheless, a morally vital success for the Allies as a whole during the course of World War I. Absolutely fantastic piece of history. I picked this simply because it was considered the first land battle of the war. I was like, let's start at the beginning, why not? And the more I learned about it, the more I read about it and all the people involved, I was like, this is, as usual, history is absolutely fantastic. Put a huge smile on my face to educate myself about this. And again, man, the Belgians, dude, when you look back at war, and I know it may be a bit corny to say this, and I don't look to offend anyone, but very much that battle of good versus evil. And no matter how outnumbered good is, they always win. Not saying that we've always won every outnumbered battle, but some of the most substantial ones, when you look at all of the wars that occurred, across the length of history, some of the most insane battles that would lead or potentially add to the, the lead of the success for the Allies or the good guys would be the ones where they were in terrible, terrible situations, where they were massively outnumbered, everything was against them. Miraculous and spectacular. That's really all I can say. As I said, guys, if you have anything to add to the Battle of Liege, if you'd like to talk a little bit more about Field Marshal Carlo von Bolo or General Lehmann or General Erich Ludendorff, feel free. You want to talk about Zeppelins, you want to talk about those Austrian-built howitzers, feel free, just please cite your work down in the comment section below. Thank you guys for joining me for this, the first episode of Battlefield Battles of World War I. If you have any questions for me, anything you'd like to see me include in my discussion for these battles in the future, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. Who knows, we might take part in the Battle of Liege come the launch of Battlefield 1's campaign. You never know. I'll see you in the next one.